We are right at the very top of Memtes and Aleph of the Rebbe Akiva. So we finished yesterday smack in the middle of a sugya, and we were trying to understand Rebbe Akiva Darshans, mainly these two psukim, right? So there's the pasuk by Nazir, and the pasuk first says that a Nazir can't be tummy, mace, and Rebbe Akiva says that from the first pasuk he learns that you can't be tummy from either a karov or even a non-karov. Then there's a second pasuk that gets very specific. So we got to figure out what does Rebbe Akiva do with all four of those words. There's also a pasuk by Kohen Gadol that does the same thing. The first, the pasuk says, and we'll see a little bit later in the daf, Rebbe Akiva says from the opening line of the pasuk, a Kohen Gadol can't be mitame to both a karov and a rachov. But then the pasuk says, again, ulaviv ulimo. So what does Rebbe Akiva do with all these words? And what we saw towards the end of yesterday's daf is Rebbe Akiva by Nazir first, right? It says aviv, imo, lachiv, so he uses both aviv and imo to teach that while a Nazir cannot be matame to a karov, he can be matame to a tamei mace. What does he then do with achiv? So he says that he learns for the case of a Nazir who's also a Kohen Gadol. A Nazir who's a Kohen Gadol, maybe we'd have a having another where there's two lav and he wouldn't be able to be matame to a tamei mace. He can. And what does he do with the word achos? So he has that brisa that teaches that a bris bismano, that a tamei mace is docha, even a bris bismano, even doing the carbon pesach. Okay, so then what does Rabbi Akiva do with the pasuk by Kohen Gadol? What does he do with aviv and imo by Kohen Gadol? So he uses it for the Gzera Shava of Rebbe to teach me that a Kohen Gadol only has an issue with tamei mace. He is allowed to be matame to a mitzorah or a zav. And no, I think it's specifically. I guess he could be matame to a shorts. Yeah, you can. But I think with the Gemaras, and it's the reading of these Gemaras are always a little bit challenging sometimes in Nazir. I mean, you can see this very, very, very lengthy Tosfos here. But essentially, what the Gemara is going to be asking right now is, we don't find anywhere in Shas that for Gzera Shavas you need two words. And Rabbi Akiva, both on the Kohen Gadol side and both on the Nazir side, uses Aviv and Imo to teach me something, whether it's Gzera Shava on the Kohen Gadol side or to matame to a Mace Mitzvah on the Nazir side. Why doesn't he need two words? That's where we'll pick up. So Rabbi Akiva Mechti, Loshna Kohen Gadol Lefudei, Beloshna Kohen Gadol V'hu Nazir, whether the Kohen Gadol is just a Kohen Gadol or is a Kohen Gadol and a Nazir, Nafka Mile'echav. He learns from the word Le'echav by Nazir that Kohen Gadol is allowed to be matame to a Mace Mitzvah. So La'aviv Uli Imo, Lamali, why do I need two words, Aviv and Imo? Right? So, and again, it's a little unclear which side he's asking. We'll go with the Rosh, who's a lot easier. The question is really on both on the Nazir side and the Kohen Gadol side. Why do we need two words? But specifically, why do we need two words for Gzera Shava? So the Gemara is going to answer, Tzrichi, I actually do need both Aviv and Imo. Ikasiv Aviv, if it only said the word Aviv, Hava, Mina, Hainu time Lo Mitmala, the reason why a Kohen Gadol can't be mitame to his father is because it's only a chazaka that it's even the Kohen Gadol's father. Tosfos speaks out, it's the chazaka, rov b'ilos acharabal. But we don't know with 100% certainty that it's the father. Aval imo diadinan lidte, but his mother that we know it's the Kohen Gadol's mother. So lidma. So if I only had lidmala, so if I only had Aviv, I would have had a havamina that a Kohen Gadol is only not allowed to be matame to his father, but he could be matame to his mother because at least we know it's his mother. And because of Rahmana imo, so let's go the other way. If the Torah only said imo, havamina imo mitmala, delav asal zara basra. I would have thought that a Kohen Gadol can't be matame to his mother because in the parshas of Yichus, whatever it is, it always goes basra the father. So therefore, if I only had mother, I would say, okay, Kohen Gadol can't be matame to his mother, but he can be matame to his father. Aval Aviv came with Amar Mar leMishpachosam leVeisavosam Ema Lidmale. So Kamash Malan, that's why we needed both father, both Aviv and Imo to teach me the Gzera Shava. So it turns out it's actually a little ironic. If you ask Rabbi Akiva, why does it say Aviv and Imo? The answer is it's a total Gzera Shava that I learned from Nazir, this halacha about being matame to a mitzorah. Why do I need two words? Because if I only had one word, I wouldn't have learned this Gzera Shava. I would have made a total mistake. And I would have said, granted, a Kohen Gadol can't be matame to a karov, but if I only had one word, Aviv and Imo, I would have made a huge mistake, and I would have thought that he can be matame to the one that's not written. So if it said father, I would have said maybe I can't be matame to a mother. If it said mother, maybe to a father. Therefore, I needed both words to teach me something totally different. Either way, the Rush speaks out, this answer works both for why he needs 2 words for Nazir and why he needs 2 words for Kohen Gadol. And with this Tosfos, just to pay some lip service because it's the entire daf, what this Tosfos is really getting into is this whole Havamina. If I only had 1 word, but I really not learned the other one, what about all these Kalvahomers we were talking about yesterday that I already know if I had one from a mother, I know from a father. So what is all that? And then he gets into these klal and prots, and it gets well above my pay grade and capacity. So that's at least what this Tosfos is talking about. Either way, we'll just finish up until the Mishnah. So then the Gemara just says, okay, so what does it do with the rest of the pasuk? This is the pasuk by Kohen Gadol. Al kol nafshos meis lovo lamali. What does Rabbi Akiva do with the pasuk? Turn the page. Al kol la'afuke repoking. So al kol teaches me that a Kohen Gadol cannot be matame to a non-karov meis la'afuke provim nafshos la'afuke revius dam sheyatsa mishnei meisim. That comes to include that if you have a revius dam, but it's not from one mace, it's from 2 different Mason, it could still shemitame ba'ol. It could still be tame ba'ol. Shenemar al kol nafshos mace lo yavo. Okay, so we're going to move on to this next Mishnah, and I found this fascinating. If I'm being, honest, I learning this entire Masechta, and this is the first time I'm learning this Masechta. I assume that a nazir is a tame mace, and then that triggers all of the things that nazirs have to do. And tame mace just means tame mace. But what we'll see is that there's different levels. There's categories of a person that can become tame mace by touching a certain part of a mace. Then there's a larger shear of what constitutes a mace in order to be metame ba'ohel. And there's an even larger shear for a nazir if he comes in contact with that size of that mass of a corpse that triggers all of these, the taglachas and the tuma and the yamim rishon and yiplu and all these things that we've just been talking about. But there's different shiurim for all these things. So now we're going to get very technical, and today's daf and tomorrow's daf is going to be very technical. So Al elu tumos hanazir migalech. This is the shear of a tumas mace where a nazir has to go through that whole migalech, that process. So it's al a mace on a corpse, al kazayis min a mace, and even a kazayis from a mace. So the Gemara is obviously going to talk about I know a kazayis from a mace. Why do I need a mace? Right? Va'al kazayis netzel va'al malei tarbid rekev. So also a kazayis of netzel. We'll see more tomorrow, but it's like decomposed flesh, or a malei tarbid rekev is a ladle full of like decomposed like bones, so it's like dust or something like that.
The dirt with the
Something with the bones. I don't know exactly.
seeped into the dirt to the rakab, yeah.
All right. Valashidra valagolgolas is the spine and the skull. Val abram and a mace, val abram and a chai, sheishal of basar karoy. This is interesting. So even one aver of a mace or an aver, even in a chai, as long as it has a small amount of basar, karoy, meaning had this flesh been on a living person, can it regenerate in some form? There's some sort of minimum shear. Now, obviously, this is less than a kazayas, because if it was a kazayas, I would have already known. So this is a smaller shear. But whatever it is, chatzi kav atzamos, or a chatzi kav of bones. And this is interesting because in order to mitame ba'ohel, Ozzy can probably tell us, the shear of what you need for bones is not a chatzi kav, it's a rova kav. It's only a quarter of a kav. But here, for a nazir to be mitame ba'ohel, it's a larger shear. It's a chatzi kav. Chatzi lugdam, also a chatzi lugdam.
So it has to be special quantity.
Yeah, it's a certain quantity. So the chatzi lugdam, again, it's interesting. Right before the Mishnah, we talked about in Rabbi Akiva's drashas, a revius dam is normally enough to be mitame ba'ohel, but again, for a nazir, it's not a revius of dam, it's a chatzi log of dam. All of these different shiurim, a nazir can be mitame if it's valma ga'an, valma sa'an, vala hilan, whether he touches it, whether he carries it, or even tumas ohel. But
when it comes to an aver, it
yes,
has to be an aver from a mace, not
or an aver menachai, if there's enough basar.
Right.
That's
Even
what
an
that's what the
aver
Mishnah said. Yeah,
menachai.
even an aver menachai.
Yeah. So I can amputate.
I guess, yeah.
That's what the Mishnah
That's what the Mishnah says. I mean, we need a
Right.
he's here. You only hear that.
Surgeon, forget it. Every day you go
Yeah,
to bed.
I don't know. It's a problem. Yeah, don't be a common nazir if you're a surgeon. Yeah.
It's very morbid.
Yeah. Val etzem kista, or even a very small shear. This is like a size of a barley, or a bone that's the size of a barley. Al maga'o val maso. So if a nazir touches a bone of that size, then he becomes tamei mace. But again, but not tumas ohel. So tumas ohel requires a specific size, and tumas maga and masa requires a smaller shear. Al elu, on all of these different shiurim hanazir megaleh. So once you hit the specific shear, the Nazir has to go through his whole tiklachas process, umaz b'shlishi b'shvi, and he has to go through the efer para aduma, the soster sakodbin, and like we saw, then all the earlier days of his nazirus are knocked out. He's got to start again. Ve'eno maschil limnos, and he doesn't begin to count again. Ella achi yitaher, or maybe it's karbanos. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan, kind of a fascinating anecdote. Achar Petirasel Shur, Mayor, after a mayor died, Amr Lahen Rabbi Yehuda Talmidim. Rabbi Yehuda said to his Talmidim, Al Yikansu Talmide, Mayor Lakan, Bifnei Shakan to run in Hain. Below Lilmo Torah Hainbain, El Lakapcheni Bahalachos Hainbain. He said to his students, he said, do not allow the students of Mayor to come in here. They're going to look like they want to learn. They really just want to bug me. You know, they want to argue with me. Don't let them in. Sumchas was apparently, you know, one of the big Talmud Muhakim of Meir, and he pushed his way in, Benichnas, and Amar Lahem, this is exactly what he did. He said, Kach Shanali Rameir, this is what Rameir taught me, Al Elo Tumas HaNazir, Megalech, this is basically our Mishnah, these are the Tumas that a Nazir goes through the whole Taglachas process, Al Hameis, Al Kazayas Min Hameis, and he says our Mishnah. And cause for Rabbi Yehuda got very angry, but Amar and he said to Talmidim, Lo kach amarti lechan al yikansu Talmid or Meir lechan yuveshakan to run in Hain. So he said, isn't this exactly what I said to you guys? Why would you let Sumchas in? Now again, what exactly was Rabbi Yehuda's problem? So first of all, our Mishnah was a Stam Mishnah. Presumably it was Rabbi Meir, right? Which is exactly why Sumchas is basically saying over our Mishnah. But Rabbi Yehuda basically had the problem that we spoke out when we first learned the Mishnah. So we'll read it inside. Al Kazayas min hameis megalech al hameis lo kolshkein. The Mishnah doesn't even make any sense. If the Mishnah is telling me that on a Kazayas of a mace, a Nazir has to go through this process, then for sure on the entire mace itself. And the Rosh speaks out on the side over here that in Rabbi Yehuda's version of this Mishnah, he didn't have the words al hameis because in his mind it didn't really make sense. So this is the conversation that's happening. Rav Yossi, we see the whole gang was around, right? So Rav Yossi hears all this and he says, Yomru, what are they going to say? Meir Shachav or Meir dies. Yehuda Kas and Yossi Shastak Torah Matahela. So I gotta answer up for a Meir here. I gotta tell everyone what's going on. So Rav Yossi tried to answer up our Mishnah, said, Lo nitzracha el lemeis she'ein alav kazayas basar. What the Mishnah, the first line of the Mishnah, ala mace, is saying it's a mace where there's no kazayas basar. So it's maybe to have that a mace that has no basar on it, like a legit skeleton, that there needs to be at least a kazayas basar. So therefore the Mishnah had to say al hameis. But the Gemara says, I mean, it's not a great answer, right? But al aver mimenu mikalech al kul kolshkin. Later in the Mishnah we talk about only an aver. So why would I think a full skeleton not? So Ella Kadam Rav Yochanan, rather as Rav Yochanan has answered in a sugya and ahalos lo nitzracha el nefel shlo niskashru evarav begidin hachanami v'nevel shlo niskashru evarav begidin. So again, exactly what the case is, I'm not entirely sure, but it's something about a fetus that is not very well developed. Very early on in the process, and therefore it didn't even have its avarim tied by the sinews. It wasn't connected. Whatever it is, whatever this is exactly, you'd have a havamina that this would not have been captured by all the categories in our Mishnah. So therefore, the Mishnah said al hameis to capture even that category. Rava Amar Rava has a different answer, and with that will end. Lo nitzracha el l'rov binyano u'l'rov binyano she'em mehen rova atzamos. Maybe to have a havamina that if you had kind of again, it's a very very small skeleton, that the amount of bones doesn't equal the chatzi kav and the rova kav and all the various measurements. And so maybe you think this, again, somehow slips through the various categories. Kamashmal on the Mishnah, the first opening line, al hameis, teach me even this category, this very small skeleton, whatever it is, that would also transmit this tumah. And with that, we'll stop and we'll continue tomorrow.